Coming up on 5 Minute News. Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 bill wins final approval in the House. A $100 billion US plan to build new nuclear missile sparks concern. And serving police officer arrested on suspicion of murder in hunt for London woman. It's Thursday, March 11. I'm Anthony Davis. A Congress riven along party lines approved the landmark $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill on Wednesday as President Joe Biden and Democrats claimed a major triumph on legislation, marshalling the government's spending might against twin pandemic and economic crises that have upended a nation. The House gave final congressional approval to the sweeping package by a near-party line 220 to 211 vote, precisely 7 weeks after Biden entered the White House and 4 days after the Senate passed the bill. Republicans in both chambers opposed the legislation unanimously, characterizing it as bloated, crammed with liberal policies, and heedless of signs the crises are easing. Most noticeable to many Americans are provisions providing up to $1,400 in direct payments this year to most adults and extending $300 weekly emergency unemployment benefits into September. But the legislation goes far beyond that. The measure addresses Democrats' campaign promises and Biden's top initial priority of easing a 1-2 punch that first hit the country a year ago. Since then, many Americans have been relegated to hermit-like lifestyles in their homes to avoid a disease that's killed over 525,000 people, about the population of Wichita, Kansas, and plunged the economy into its deepest depths since the Great Depression. For Biden and Democrats, the bill is essentially a canvas on which they've painted their core beliefs that government programs can be a benefit, not a bane, to millions of people, and that spending huge sums on such efforts can be a cure, not a curse. Not a single Republican lawmaker voted for the bill in Congress. The US is building a new $100 billion nuclear missile based on a set of flawed and outdated assumptions, a new report by the Federation of American Scientists will say. The report, due to be published next week, will argue the planned ground-based strategic deterrent is being driven by intense lobbying and politicians from states that will benefit most from it economically, rather than a clear assessment of the purpose of the new intercontinental ballistic missile. According to the FAS, a non-partisan think tank, the US Air Force price tag for the new GBSD was deliberately framed in such a way as to appear slightly less than the cost of extending the life of the missile it would be replacing, the Minuteman III. An effort by Congress to mandate an independent study on the comparative costs was blocked in 2019 with the help of the industry lobby. The current estimate is that the basic acquisition of costs of the GBSD will be $100 billion, while the total cost of building, operating and maintaining it over its projected lifespan to 2075 is projected at $264 billion. The report is being published as the Biden administration is preparing its first defense budget, which may reveal its intentions towards the GBSD, which is in its early stages. There are currently 400 Minuteman missiles spread over 5 states. Many arms control advocates argue that rather than being replaced, they should be phased out entirely on grounds of their vulnerability and consequent instability. A US president would have less than half an hour to decide whether to use the missiles in the event of a surprise attack from Russia, the only country with an arsenal big enough to carry out such an attack, or risk losing them altogether to incoming enemy missiles. The decision would have to be made on the basis of early warning systems, which could potentially be faulty or hacked. Police officers in London have found what appear to be human remains in the search for Sarah Everard, a 33-year-old woman who disappeared in London earlier this month, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner said on Wednesday. The discovery was made in an area of woodland in Ashford, Kent, an area in southeast England. A serving London Metropolitan Police officer was arrested on Wednesday on suspicion of murder. The officer remains in custody at a London police station. Everard was last seen on March 3rd in Clapham, South London. The arrested man is a serving Metropolitan Police officer in the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command, the Met said in a statement. His primary role was uniformed patrol duties of diplomatic premises. A woman who's aged in her 30s was also arrested on the evening of the 9th of March on suspicion of assisting an offender. She remains in custody. The Met Police has made a referral to the Independent Office for Police Conduct following the officer's arrest. You can subscribe to 5 Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5 Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen Podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.